and the talent that my mother had born to her equals a duck. What is it, Trey?
Yo, man, that's the formula.
Yo. Formula episode 10. I realize I keep saying yo at the beginning. Maybe I should start getting a more professional introduction, but
It's your DJ intro, man.
I don't know why yo just made its way into my vocabulary. Caroline always holds over my head that was the first thing I ever said to her. Did you know that?
I feel like probably the first thing you ever said to me, too.
Yo.
Yeah.
Do you remember when we first met?
Wasn't it at Jeremy's house and you came there and I don't know what we were talking about, but pretty sure that was it, right?
Well, I was going to say that, or I don't remember what the building was, but do you remember in like the very, very early days when everyone would meet? I remember we used to sit in a circle.
Yeah.
And like Alex Kimball was there.
Yeah. I know it.
Did we meet then?
I don't know. That might be it. I met a lot of people at that building.
I was going to say, I feel like I met a lot of people. I only went to that building, I think, once or twice, but I remember meeting a lot of people that day.
Yeah. I have a photo from that day, though, that you're talking about.
We have like an interesting story arc, I feel like, in how our relationship has progressed. I feel like the times that we were most in each other's proximity, we like weren't as close as we are now, and we live states away.
Yeah, I mean, you're too cool, man. You're a popular guy.
Yeah, right. Trent, the producer, was locked in.
Trent, the producer, man. Some days I miss the producing lifestyle.
Yeah, what do you miss about it?
I think there's just something like so beautiful about like having something that's just an idea and then like 2 weeks later that idea comes to fruition, or whether it's a month or whatever, but like a short period of time to see something created that was once just something you thought of. And there's always like interesting people in that world too that don't want to just like have conversations about what their pipeline was that week and how they're doing.
Can you explain what a producer is? Like, what does it mean to be a producer, and what did it mean, whether that's what it actually meant when you were one or not? Like, were kind of like your responsibilities?
Yeah, I think as a producer, like you're more like the logistics person and like the guy that's supposed to have relationships and like more of like almost like the captain of the team in a way, doing all the stuff that no one wants to do. So you're more so like you can have ideas on the general idea that you're trying to execute, but a lot of it is like that organization piece of like the finances and understanding like, okay, we're going to put this person to do this job and they need to make sure that they know how to do this job properly. And then just holding everyone accountable to make sure that they actually execute on those things, which is a juggling act in itself when it comes to working with artists. Well, especially at that time when we were so young too. So, people were a lot more emotional, I think, than probably what like needed to be. But yeah, you have to handle that piece of it all too and like really hold everyone accountable, which isn't always fun or some people don't really appreciate it.
So when we would do like events and stuff, like you're the one reaching out to vendors, you're the one like finding the event space, like all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Or somebody maybe would have an idea of they wanted to use an event space, and yeah, you'd have to coordinate everything, and then I'd have to be the one that comes like with the actual plan. Like somebody can talk about the hypotheticals and stuff, but I'd be like, okay, this is how it's going to go down, and then put it on paper for somebody to agree to.
And you miss that era of kind of being able to do that kind of stuff. I was trying to think of parallels between what you do now and if like what you were doing previously helps you at all with that job.
I think there's just so much movement with it too. Like I'm in an office all the time is whack.
Yeah.
Like we were going to different spots, like whether that's checking out a location just to see if we want to be there, or like going and meeting new people in person, not just like we had to hold Zoom calls and stuff too, but a lot of it was like, let me come be face to face with you, make sure I can like trust you a little bit, or like, see if you're somebody I want to work with or not. And yeah, I just think like there was always something new happening.
Yeah, I miss that too. I think that there's a lot that came from that time that kind of bleeds into how I operate nowadays. And I know we kind of just like jumped right in here, but something we wanted to do is come to these podcasts with a bit more specific conversations and come up with some prompts that are either in question form or just based on specific things we're going through. And one of the ones that we have here, I think, is really relates to what we're currently talking about. So what I want to do is just read this prompt and then kind of get your 2 cents on what you feel about it in kind of your current stage. So this one, it says you've been building repeatable systems for audits, client work, blogs, content, and even branding. From that, there's conversations that juxtapose discipline versus creativity, and how once you're professionals, you don't get to wait for the muse anymore. So what does discipline look like for each of you in December 2025? And when I originally read this, like the activity versus discipline thing, in that era that we're just talking about when you were doing like producing stuff, the creativity versus discipline was something we lived in real time with everything we did. There was always the conversation, or maybe not the conversation, but like the pressure makes diamonds kind of a concept where discipline, we didn't necessarily have as hard of deadlines as we could have, and we maybe didn't stick to as strict of a business plan as we maybe could have, but a lot of the creative element is what kind of helped jumpstart a lot of the things that we did. So you can maybe talk about that time period if you want, but maybe in your current stage of life, what's like your balance between sticking hard to like a disciplined regimen versus letting your brain kind of just take over and work with whatever makes sense in the moment?
Yeah. That is, I mean, I think it's just like completely different thought processes, times in my life. I would say like in that era, like it was almost like you're waiting for whatever to hit you in the face. And like there's inspiration everywhere, especially when you're young. Like you're so inspired by life. You want to do something and like you have all this energy and you don't have as many responsibilities. And so like for that time, it was just kind of like if an idea struck and it stuck with me, like we were going to execute on it. And I think that discipline for me was like, I'm just going to put all my energy just in this thing and forget about everything else in the world. And I'm just going to like not sleep and I'm going to do this thing. And then when it's done, I'm going to sleep for like 4 days and then I'll be fine and be recovered and probably like party just to like celebrate that it happened. Nowadays, it's like I don't think I like have the luxury of not having responsibility anymore. Like growing up is a real thing, having bills, like
Yeah.
having a partner, having, making sure we're spending time together, all these other things, or like making sure I hit my numbers at work. Like I didn't even have like a real job at the time. Or if I did, it was usually like bartending because I was like, then I can make my schedule and, I can make quick money if I need to. Where now it's like, I think one, it's having, and I'm building this out right now because I had to reevaluate my whole life basically recently, but like knowing what numbers I need to hit now and like what repeatable things I need to do to compound over a long period of time and really just kind of like suck it up. Like you talk about some of the best athletes in the world, like the Kobe Bryants of the world, all these guys. And something that a lot of them say is like, it's not that they were necessarily more skilled than the next guy growing up and like had all this talent in the world, but it was more about like they were willing to do the things that they knew that they had to do on the days they didn't want to, or they did the boring things and they did the boring things really well. And I think one thing that I learned from that time period was I took on the jobs that everyone else didn't want to do because they were the boring jobs. And I think like that's helped me so much with how I think about things now of like, you need to have these things in place to actually have something successful. Now, do I execute on those things all the time? I think I'm still learning how to do that, but like understanding the consistency that you need to have to make something happen and to get better at it, actually. Like, I think in the past, like I would just use my dumb, young arrogance to like get through things. And like, I had all this confidence in the world and I probably sounded like a dumbass, like 90% of the time, but like, that confidence was enough for me to like walk into any room and be willing to say whatever I thought or what I believed, even if like I didn't, even if it probably wasn't fully the truth or something that I didn't believe, I was able just to convince myself like, yeah. Like I remember telling a guy that a that a project would be $1 million, and that project, looking back, I'm like, we could have done that for like 25K or something like that, but like just a lost opportunity because I was young, dumb, and arrogant. But like I do envy that part about me still, is like to have that young confidence of like I'm him, basically, you know?
Well, ignorance is also bliss too, right? It's like
Yeah.
you think you know enough, and that confidence got you into that conversation, and that might have not worked out, but it gave you that learning opportunity, if nothing else.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I think that's the difference for me though, is like now I know more of where my weaknesses are compared to just like have thinking everything was a strength.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
feel like I took a lot of similar stuff from that time period. I think you talk about like doing the boring jobs. I mean, I was already a few years into doing the boring jobs. So coming
Yeah.
into a world that was so creatively charged really challenged how I typically did things
Yeah.
and how I was trained to do things and how I thought things were to be done.
Yeah.
And I think now, like fast forwarding to how I approach stuff, I feel like I have a pretty solid balance between like the creativity and the discipline just because I understand the separation still for sure between like execution and just what I think is possible. Because I have like some cool ideas always, but that doesn't necessarily mean I can physically do it or have the funds, for example, to pay someone to do it. But I remember in that time period, it's like I came in, like I've always been the business guy. Like I've always just worked in corporate jobs and business, and I come into a world where it's okay to just kind of figure it out. And I don't know, that I feel like the like tenacity to just like take a stab at things and like not be afraid of its outcome is something that's important, whether it's a creatively charged pursuit or if it's just like something you want to try out.
Hmm.
I'm interested to know though, like you talked about, you're kind of like reevaluating this version of that in your life in present time. Like, what are some tangible things that ways that that shows up now? Whether it's like we talked about the video content you've been putting out a bit, like the jujitsu stuff, like through this podcast. Like, what's the balance now between letting yourself just flow versus, I've got this list of items to do today. I have my calendar organized. Like, in
Yeah.
what ways do you allow yourself to just flow and not be too like stiff with it?
Yeah. I mean, I think like now by setting times, like that is how you talked about last week how you like were able to meditate at times. And now it's like when I set time, I have to I have to like be able to get myself to the flow state. And like I think the easiest place I can do that is in jujitsu because like there's the warm up period. Like I do like a certain ritual to get ready for the training. I'm doing like bear crawls or I'm doing whatever. And that puts, I know once I've done that, next thing I'm going to do is like go and have to grapple with somebody. And like at that point, I'm like, all right, I'm ready for this. But now how do I do that in my regular life is like, sometimes it's just not happening. Sometimes it's not in the flow state. But like for me, what I've really done to allow myself to try to get there though is like by locking my phone with this like program called Brick so I can't go on social media or something like that. But really just trying to fight through it and clear my head and like pray beforehand even just to like get myself in the mindset that I'm supposed to be in so that I can be creative. So like for me, the times I'm most creative is when like what probably happens is like I've been trying to sit there. I have a whole day's worth of time. Steph's out of the house, like I'm alone, and I've been like, all right, I'm gonna execute on this. And then all of a sudden the day keeps going by and I'm like not getting there. And then it gets to the time where I'm like, all right, I have to do this. And I I like to write And like, so a lot of times for me, it's when I like to write at night. So like then get really creative and I'm like kind of tired and loopy. Otherwise, it's like early in the morning and I got to a coffee shop and I'm just like cooking on my laptop. Like those are the two moments when I'm like,
Same,
this is where I'm most clear.
same.
Yeah.
It's so funny, like, as you were saying that, I think a light bulb moment clicked for me because I think the balance now is keeping the schedule organized enough to be able to set aside time
Yeah.
to feel that, but then once the time's already set aside, then you're open to kind of free flow with your thoughts, like, in writing specifically. But that I think is the key right there, is being organized enough and disciplined enough to find the time to do it, but
Yeah.
then getting to do it because you set the time aside to do it, you shouldn't have anything else to think about.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what's changed for me recently too, instead of like being like, I have this amount of time to do the thing, I'm starting to change it where it's like, all right, in this time period, I'm going to get these specific things done. Whether that's like, I'm going to write 4 pages or I'm going to edit one video. Like it's a very specific number. And I mean, I've been goal setting for forever. And like, when they say being specific is so important, it is. And I've noticed it so much with like my training specifically. Before I would be like, I'm gonna go lift and I have this whole workout to do. But now I'm like more focused on the numbers of the workout too. So if it's like I'm doing for you for I know you're a big squats guy or a big uh
Back
bench.
in my day,
Yeah, yeah. But like, say it's like I'm hitting 25 reps or something like that, instead of just like, I'm gonna do the 3 sets of 10 and blah, 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 and blah. I don't know. Like, for me, it has to be a very solid number so that I can like push myself to the limit to try to get there.
can you talk about like goal setting in general? I was thinking about this. How specific do you tend to get with like personal goals outside of just like gym gains? How specific do you get with like, I want to make X amount of money by this time, or like how close in proximity do you typically go, like year based or like goals each month? Like how granular do you get with goal setting?
I do both, I think. Like I try to set daily, weekly, monthly, year, 5 year, whatever lifetime goals. But I think what I've been doing recently that's helped me a lot is putting that into ChatGPT and like there's a couple books that really define like how goal setting should be set up and like how to implement it in your life. So I'll just use like a prompt like use Think and Grow Rich, The Laws of Success. Both are by Napoleon Hill, and then like Atomic Habits or something like that. And say, help me edit these goals so that they fit in this structure. And then I'll just like edit it from there. But I always just
Smart.
put, yeah. And that's helped me a ton. But then a lot of it is just like, before it was just like, I'm going to do X by this month or like by this year and keep it really simple. But now I'm realizing like I need the help with the prompts to set up like the auto suggestion piece or like the self talk piece to make sure that I'm like reiterating that to myself. Cause it's so easy nowadays to just like have negative self talk because, you know, going back to that young, dumb, arrogant, like self confidence, like I've in ways forgot about that because like my self talk then was just immaculate.
Yeah. And
So
now, well, you talk about like having to grow up. It's like that arrogant self talk won't, pay your rent at the end of the month. And like, is it going to get you the job, or maybe it will? But I've had similar things in my life where I just
mhm,
had a specific persona, and that got me into XYZ in my life. And it just was so subconscious at the time that
yeah,
the older you get and the more you have to apply that to like real life intense situations, the
mhm,
more aware of it you become. And
yeah,
then the more aware of it you are when it doesn't happen as naturally as it once did.
yeah.
So that's like an interesting piece with the two. It's like the balance between what you've believed yourself to be good at and then now having to find a new version of that and doing it intentionally.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. It's weird how you start to notice things as you grow. How though, like, do you set up your goals? I know you are very much a goal setting person and have a lot that you're doing, and especially in a very limited amount of time. How do you look at like a day, a week, a year, whatever that is for you?
Yeah, I've honestly struggled lately with like specific goals just because I don't know, I feel like the long-term plan has stayed pretty consistent, which makes it harder to set new goals when it comes to like my business or like my professional career because I'm finding that it's always like the home run goals that I inevitably will get to, but it's like, okay, but X, Y, and Z has to happen before I get there. So now for me, it's just like kind of on a day by day and week by week basis, just kind of doing the things I need to do to get
Mhm.
myself closer to those home run goals.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I'm trying to think specifically like how I've done this lately. Like I am very much a writer like you are, and I spend less time on creating specific goals and like writing down goals and more time just about like getting all of my thoughts out. A lot of those sometimes kind of translate into what I want to be doing, but I don't know. I don't know if I have a good answer with like actual goal setting. I don't know that I have a
Yeah.
good process for that really right now.
Mm, heard you. Sounds like it's almost more like you've understand what the long-term vision is and you just understand the repeatable things that you have to do to get there.
Exactly. And then I'm just like, so I channel that energy into then doing the right things to get myself closer to there.
Mhm.
But I don't know. I feel like I've always had kind of a, not always, but I've had somewhat of a clear vision on the type of person I want to be, like the place that I want to live, the type of
Mhm.
lifestyle I want to live, the type of relationship I want to be in, the type of business I want to build. It's just a matter of,
Yeah.
I don't know, doing kind of like the cheesy stuff along the way to get closer to that.
Yeah. Do you feel pretty aligned to what those visions have been for yourself?
Yeah, it's hard to kind of say humbly, but I don't know, I feel like I have checked a lot of the boxes, at least from like a lifestyle perspective. I
Mhm.
don't think that I don't know, I like know that money will come with a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, but I don't think that it's motivation for me necessarily. I think like the lifestyle that I want to live more so pertains to who I am and how I act and how I eat and my ability to exercise and the area that I live in and the people that I hang out with. And I mean, that's kind of a corny response, but I feel like I've been working to get to that place, financial or not, like as long as I've been an adult. Like I feel like I tried to really grow up fat, which has had its pros and cons. Like we talked about that previous era of life when we were doing different stuff. Like a lot of the stuff that I have now figured out, I was in the early stages of figuring out at that time
Mhm.
and kind of felt like I was ahead of the curve, at least with like some of the people in my life at that time. So it doesn't mean I don't need to set goals now, but it's like I've got the vision, but it's going to take me to get there. I don't feel like I have to do the like manifestation thing because like, if I want to work for something, then I got to work for it. Or if there's something that I want, then I got to work for it.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I have like some specific visions of like it for visible, for example, like obviously I have a pretty good idea on how that will scale. And that's having good systems in place, having good people that I work with, having a good sales strategy, all of that stuff. But I think that's more so of just me doing the stuff that I got to do and less me setting goals to,
Yeah.
one day make X amount for visible.
Yeah. That's fair. Yeah. That's I hear what you're saying though. It makes sense. Like it's also one thing that I've noticed. Here, let me move quick.
Good.
Well, this isn't as cool as of a view.
It does look pretty similar though. I don't know if it's obvious that you moved. Someone else just had to use that room or what?
Yeah, I guess. But what were you saying?
Talking about goal setting stuff. I just was gonna even say while we're on the topic, like truthfully, kind of a topic that I'm a little like scared about or like have a bit of a fear about goal setting. I feel like it's just so commonly talked about. You gotta set goals, you gotta like create your life around these goals you set. And I don't know that I do as good of a job at it as I once did.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you go in ebbs and flows with like the goal setting stuff, or have you been pretty consistent with it throughout?
Yeah, it's definitely something that like comes and goes. I think like right now, why it's been important for me is just because I've been reevaluating like what it is that's important to me. I think like I got lost in like this corporate world of like just trying to survive and like being in the rat race instead of being like who I'm supposed to be. I think that has been really like fucking with me, honestly.
Yeah.
So like for me, that's the only thing I've been like really focused on. And I think that's like, even a lot of our conversations they've been centered around is like refining that thing for me because it's so easy to get lost in what, other people's expectations or like what your boss's expectation is of you and like all this stuff. And that's why like I think I'm in a spot of like almost just like fighting to survive in a way to like re-find who I am and like not let the things outside of me define me. Like even in like a lot of personal relationships too, it's like you start to realize like, okay, am I being like who I'm supposed to be or am I being like what I think is the expectation of me? And I think like even with you talking about like the stoicism and like that made me really rethink about like how I have been, what my own expectations are of myself. And I think like it's so easy and you go through ebbs and flows of like knowing that and not knowing that. And like I think why it messed me up so much is because for my whole life I knew exactly who I am, what I'm supposed to be, where I'm going. And I don't think a lot of those things have changed, but I think like they definitely have like shifted in ways whether that was intentional or not. But like, I still know what those principles are. I just think like maybe I haven't been executing on them as well as what I should be. And that like really has been bothering me. So now it's like, okay, fully reevaluation, like go to the drawing board and redefine all those things. Cause we talked about this last week is like a lot of times when I set a goal, next thing I know, I look back at the end of the year and I've hit all those goals
Yeah.
or like 90% of them. And then it's like, okay, well, there is something to writing it down. There is something to just in the back of your mind knowing that that's what the plan is, you know? So, and I think like the first of the year is always a big thing for me because of that. Like I always get in a time period around here where I'm like really focused on these things. And I don't think I did it last year because like I moved to a new city and like I was working a job and all these different things. And I think that's why this last year has been like so challenging to me because I didn't have this plan laid out of like, this is what I'm going to do. And I think now based on like learning and trial and error, I'm very clear on what I want. I just have to get it down and like then execute on it. Like, cause if you have a plan, that's great. But if you're not working on it every day and fighting through the things you don't want to do, like, I mean, there's no point even doing it at that point. But like, I think nowadays it like matters so much to me because I know what I don't want and what I don't want is what I have right now basically. And that even goes to like growing up. I used to always take jobs that I knew I would hate because I didn't want to do those things. And like I was really scared of working in the corporate world. Like that's why I didn't do internships when I was younger even because I was just like so scared of getting locked to a desk. I was like I'm not going to do this and like I'm just going to figure it out and then things change. Like you have to sometimes take those steps. And then I'm realizing like I knew I wouldn't like this and I still don't like it. And like
Yeah.
I figure it out.
It's so crazy how we've taken such different journeys, like in our upbringing and even in our like adulthood and our careers, and kind of are now in similar places, but have having came from completely different directions. You're getting a lot of head nods from me today because I feel like you're verbalizing a lot of the things that I feel, and obviously since I've been in this limbo phase as long as I have, kind of like with one foot in of living the life and the lifestyle that I want to live, and then one foot still kind of chained
Yeah.
to that desk like you'd mentioned. Like I haven't fully seen it, but I've gotten enough of a taste that I have a pretty clear picture of what the ideal version looks like with the shitty part of it cut out.
Yeah.
But it's just such like a learned thing over time too. And something else that clicked while you were talking is something I've been super aware of lately is the kind of separation between this big thing that we're working ourselves up towards and all these big goals and ideas that we've put in our heads about what we want our lives to look like versus what our lives look like in the present moment, and constantly trying to remind myself about the memories I'm making now in the moment and the life that I'm living now in the moment versus what things will look like once I reach that goal. And I think, I don't know, the new year's a good thing always for me, especially in the last few years, especially. I remember, I think it was like 2024
Hmm.
going into 2025. I just like had this tangible feeling for the first time on a new year that I was just like fired up. I remember feeling like super creative and I had all these ideas and I was posting a bunch on social media at the time. I feel like, although I don't want to live and die by social media, I feel like when I'm in a good creative place and I like can just come across cool stuff and I'm like building cool stuff and I have cool stuff to say or finding
Yeah.
good music, like I just put all that stuff out there and don't even think twice about it. And I feel like that translates really well into the stuff that I'm doing in my personal, real, and like business life as well, because I feel like trusting yourself and like having the confidence to do whatever we're wanting to do is half the battle.
Hmm.
And I'm kind of having to reevaluate or find different versions of that in different stages of my life.
Yeah.
And it obviously doesn't come as easy as when we're as it once did, when we're just surrounded by people who have this tenacity to do cool stuff and no responsibility to hold themselves accountable to getting it done.
Yeah.
I was going to look because I think this is kind of the same topic we're on, but another prompt that we'd written down is about the relationship to ambition that we both have in our lives right now. We typically oscillate between hungry and reflective, between let's go and let's think.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to see like where do you feel you stand between let's go and let's think? Obviously, again, we're both
Yeah.
in the corporate world a bit. And we like have these ideas, but maybe we don't have the time to always execute on them. Do you think you lean one way or the other towards let's go or let's think right now? And where do you prefer to sit?
Yeah. I think right now it's like in a mix of the two. Like I'm very fired up about, what my ideas are and like how to do those things and like thinking of a lot about like how do you make that happen instead of just like killing myself and like doing that's all I focus about and probably wasting a lot of time in the process like cuz when I'm in that moment it's very much like there's a lot of wasted time. Um, I th but, like, the let's go piece is very prevalent right now too because it's like, I'm about to be 28, or I mean, I'm about to be 29.
That's what I thought. I was like, damn, younger than I thought.
Yeah, no, I'm about to be 29, and, like, I had certain goals for, like, when I'm 30, and, like, I'm in a serious relationship. I'm in a city that is, like, the most competitive city in the world, and I'm like, I don't wanna be average, and I never wanna be average, and, like, in ways I feel average, and that fucking scares me, and so, like, it's very much like especially with jujitsu, I've got a glimpse of what it feels like to be deadly again, and, like, then that got taken away, and that, like, really messed with me, but it made me think on a lot of these things of, like, what I want and, like, what that feeling means in different areas of my life. So it's very much like, now's the time to do it, and no one's waiting for me, no one's gonna give it to me, like, it's very much on me to do, but it's just like, then you get to the day where and I think, like, the biggest issue for me and why I think the think part is so important is, like, the self-talk. Like, I think, like, that is very much, like and going back to those prompts, like, using that to build because sometimes I mean, you can like, writing it works, I think, but sometimes I just write way too much, and then so it's
Or
like
without a purpose.
yeah, and then I can't I can't like use that as something I'm saying consistently every day because then I would be reading a whole book every day.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, I don't know. I think that's kind of where I'm at with that. I don't know. How about,
Yeah, I don't know. I wrote down when you were talking, like, I think I'm also somewhere in between, but it's almost let's go, but more so I gotta do it. And I don't really mean that with a positive connotation. I think this plays back into what I was saying about just kind of getting lost in
yeah,
the stuff we're working towards. And I've done a pretty good job at packing my schedule full over the last couple of years to just like
yeah,
juggle as many things as I can, eventually trim the fat, end up in the best place possible.
yeah,
But I kind of get lost in the sauce where I'll have weeks that from the second I wake up to the second I'm going to bed at night, I'm just trying to get everything done I have to that day. I'm
yeah,
not setting enough time aside for the let's think piece.
hmm,
Unanimously, whenever the let's think piece is winning,
yeah,
everything else starts to connect from there.
yeah,
So I think it's just if nothing else, it's important for awareness to clock the moments when you're not thinking, you're not setting aside time to do that because
yeah,
I don't know, getting stuck in the rat race and just kind of putting the time in. Again, maybe it is always towards something greater, but I say this knowing that a lot of it is busy work
hmm,
and things that exhaust me and things that don't excite me. Talk back about the kind of list I went through last week on the call. I have things that aren't in that list that take up a lot of my time right now. And I would love to get to a place where it's that list or thinking about things within that list, channeling thoughts
yeah,
and energy towards the things in that list. So I don't know if I'm sitting between either right now. I have moments, one-offs where I think and I have lots to write about and lots to think about and ideas, and you'll typically get long text messages from me when I am feeling those moments, but
yeah.
I would like more of them for sure.
Yeah, and I think, like, at the times when I'm feeling best, it's making the time for exactly what you're talking about, like and going back to what we were talking about last week with, like, just making time in the sauna, like, that's where I did it for a long time, where I, like, meditated and thought through things for my day and, like, really separated myself from any of the, busyness of life and, like, the drug that you have with you at all times, like
Yeah,
it's
the drug
so
with no case on it.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Even more dangerous. But no, I think like really making yourself make time for that. And I think it's important, like as a man, and I mean, I've been trying to make myself like do this my entire life and I suck at it, but like getting up early in the morning and like having time for yourself is when I feel amazing because like I feel like your mind is more clear at that time and there's probably science that says that. I feel like I've heard Andrew Huberman talk about something like that where it's just like you're almost still in like a REM stage at that time and you're able to think and like you think clearly and you can make ideas happen and you can write well. And I just think that a lot of times for myself and for other people, when they don't do that, things aren't aligned in their life. And a lot of times for me, why I don't do that is just because I'm not going to bed at the right time. Like that is one of the biggest like issues I think that is talked about, probably isn't talked about enough is just like get your ass to bed.
Yeah.
So
I've always had like issues off and on with my sleep over the years, and I think I have like a at times weird sleep anxiety that prevents me from just going straight to sleep. It's better probably now, but I think a lot of people probably can relate to this where they're just doing whatever miscellaneous stuff they can to like keep themselves up so they don't have to inevitably
yeah,
force themselves to go to sleep. But even when I am experiencing that, I'm tired as hell. So like I should
yeah,
be able to just put the phone down and go to bed, or I should be able to put whatever I'm doing down and just go to bed. But it's funny because you talk about the morning stuff. I feel like every period in my life that I can think back to where I was the most productive or the most good came from was times where I was on a consistent morning schedule.
Yeah.
And I've fallen off of it for sure because, I'm just working a lot, exhausted at the end of the day, find myself not getting to bed as early as I can. Have convinced myself over the years, which I do think is true. Like, I'm not totally walking this back, but have convinced myself that sleep is priority over getting up early for the gym and whatever. Although that's true, and like I do still think sleep is like the biggest key to life, I need to not be soft at times also because I'm like, I can power through one day of 6.5, 7 hours of sleep and then probably could get like 9 the next day.
Yeah.
So finding the balance of that too for like what's good for my brain and my energy and my clear headedness throughout the day. Cause I haven't gone to the gym once this week and I've been having like probably one of the busiest weeks I've had all year just because it's been a lot to do. But I haven't got to go to the gym. I have been feeling real brain foggy. Sleep's been bad. My diet's been bad all week. And there needs to be like the good weeks to level it out.
Yeah.
The routine and the structure, I think, is what comes from that. So I feel like this is, if nothing else, good reminders and accountability for me to figure that shit out.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like exactly what you're saying, the accountability piece of just talking about it is so important. And why I was excited to talk today is like, I mean, I looked at our list of potential topics and I was scared of 99% of them.
Yeah.
Ones we picked out, I was like, shit, like, do I really want to go out myself right now with
Yeah.
the like,
That's why
and
I think it's helpful too, because like that's why I said I was kind of scared about the goal thing, because I feel like it's so easy to come on here and just talk about stuff we have easy answers to. And I mean, even probably listening to all our episodes front to back up until now, I'm sure we've circled around topics pretty heavily, and
yeah,
I'm typical of giving long-winded answers to easily answered questions,
yeah,
which is another conversation, but it's just a good way to kind of force ourselves to think outside of what we're expecting to talk about and talk
yeah,
about the things that if we're struggling to internalize it, like I said, I keep nodding my head at a lot of the stuff you're saying because I'm like, I had that same answer, but I might have not said it the same way that you did. So that's
yeah,
why I appreciate it.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's yeah, I exactly. I'm excited. That's why I'm excited to get hop on these each week. And also, I've been thinking a lot about that, like in my personal life too, of just like my relationships of who I'm giving my time to. And I'm thinking about it and like the one reason why, like I said, why I wanted to talk to you more and jump on these more often, but also too, it's like who else around me is thinking about these things and like making sure like in every conversation I bring them up to see where people are at with these. Cause I think like a lot of people want to talk about them, but are scared to, or they just don't feel like there's people to talk about it. And I think there's a lot of people that are actually really scared to talk about it. And it does kind of frighten them when you bring it up, but that's good to know too. Like, because you want to know who's going to be in your corner. And I think like very much been thinking about, okay, I need to be around some people that are doing things that I want to do to make me rise up to that. And one reason why I think I've been having such an issue with the office lifestyle is because like people just like group up and talk about like how negative and how everything sucks in the world and all this stuff. And negativity just like gets to me.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a virus. I know it's a virus. And like, that's why I try to stay away from it. I do think like it's okay to talk about bad things, but it also is like, you have to be very careful about how you're choosing to speak about negativity. And I think 99% of the world and something that I've been doing myself is like blaming every outside thing for that negativity that's in your life. But it's also, you have to stop and look at yourself. Like, what am I doing that is making this such a bad situation for me? And then take the accountability to act on it. And it's the same thing with like drug use. Like, the first thing is admitting it.
Yeah. Well, people aren't really ready to have those conversations either, nor do they have the I don't want to say brain capacity, but people just don't think this way a lot of the times. And I was actually talking to my buddy John about this last night because it's weird to think about, but I've been working from home as long as I've been in my professional career. Just about. I think there was like a year before COVID hit after we graduated college, before the like slow work from home started. And I've worked at a few companies since. Every time it's been fully remote. So I've been thinking lately about the kind of bubble that I've been in or that I've created for myself and how I've just gradually been able to cut all that negativity out of my life, whether it's on social media, whether it's on the people who are in my life, family, friends,
Mhm.
whatever it is. I feel like for the most part, I steer pretty clear of any sort of dialogue or energy
Yeah.
that I don't jive with. And there's just been like a few instances in the past couple weeks, like the sauna sometimes is a place for this just because, oftentimes sauna is like bro time and some of the dudes that end up in there just have like the craziest things to talk about. And I was just extremely outnumbered. I wasn't saying anything in it, so like I just say outnumbered by these maybe 9 dudes. We're all on the same page about X topic. I'll leave vague. And I just was in there like, oh, like I didn't even know people think or talk like this still. Like it's
Yeah.
crazy to think about. Um, but then similar, we were at when we went snowboarding last night. It's like a bunch of teenage kids out there, and just some of the things they were saying, some of the things that we were doing, I just was like, it's. I feel like I said like I'm in this bubble sometimes, which is
Mhm.
good for a lot of things, just because I don't have to like take that stuff into my life, but it's just crazy sometimes hearing what's out there in the world and starting to recognize
Yeah.
the typical way someone my age's brain works. Luckily, throughout the years, I've like sought out people like you and
Yeah.
a few select other people in my life that think the same way I do. But
Mhm.
it's just, yeah, the same stuff you kind of referenced
Those
on the
people your
floors at a
age.
sales floor. I mean, just like, not just my age, but just like the average person, like you take me in a room full of people my age and like
Yeah.
gender and stuff, how many people will think like you and I, and how many people will
Yeah.
think like the other person I'm referencing.
Yeah. I do think too, like, especially in like a team environment of any sort, people always talk about how hard it is to find a leader, and like especially in work teams where you're there so much and like surrounded by each other, like your leader is super important to like establish some of that communication, or like establish or reestablish those things within the team of like not focusing on the negative and stuff like that. Or if it is negative, being like so quick to make somebody like push through it and look at themselves about it. Like I think of this guy, Brian Ratter from my last company, who I would love to have on here and probably will at some point. But this guy is like an insane brain when it comes to sales, and like he doesn't go for the blame other people for anything type of thing. And like when I got out of my training program at Schneider, I said to my boss, I was like, can you seat me right next to him and Austin, who Austin was like, who now is the bestseller at Schneider for their brokerage department. I remember her saying like, you got to go ask him, like, just, I don't know. And I was like, I don't care. I'll go ask him right now. And I ran over to him and I asked him like, I don't know why they're making me do this, but they're saying I need to ask you to sit next to you to learn from you. And he's like, he literally looked at me and said, I don't give a fuck where you sit. You're a grown ass man. You can sit there if you want to. But then like what came out of that was we had a row of probably 7 people that just wanted to get better. And like, if you made an excuse, like I remember Austin asking me a question like, why aren't you staying on top of your notes? Like, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, I'm getting busy, blah, blah, blah. He looked at me, he goes, I run a book that's like $30 million right now. I can keep up with my notes. So if I can, you can too. And I was just like, yeah, that's true. There's nothing I can say to that. And then it made me like instantly act instead of where it is in a lot of places, or like what my team is now, where it's just like such like the world is ending every day of your life. And that like just like latches on to you. and starts to eat you away. But it's hard to find like a place where that isn't the norm.
Yeah. Do you think that like hindsight is 2020? Like, do you think all the stuff that you're now registering as positives from your previous job, do you think you'll have similar things once you're out of this company? Or do you think that you recognize this stuff more when you were at Schneider?
I think what it is for me is it makes me think about when I was young, like coming out of like going into college, and I had like a very bad situation with my basketball like career in high school, and like very negative situation all the time. And like why I wanted to be a college basketball coach when I was younger was so that I could create an environment like that. And that's always been the case of like, well, I want to create that in the team that I'm building. And I think that's just where my headspace is again, is just like, I need to create those values and those fundamentals and just do it myself, because like what I want and what's perfect for me to thrive in, and what I think probably most people, especially like the people I want around me to thrive in, is something that I'm going to have to create with the people that I know I can create it with, or that think the same way. And like, I'm not going to talk bad about Salesforce at all, because there is teams here that are amazing. Like there's a team next to me that outperforms everyone, and they never are talking like that. There's like even the people I work with too, like my AEs, like they're top performers. Like I don't think they're talking that way at all. Like I think I said this, one of my AEs like laughed off that he wasn't going to make 100 grand that day, but he's like, I'm still going to get it. And like, that's just like the people I want to be around, and like the best people. And like, especially at Salesforce, there's some straight killers. Like that's the way they're thinking, and I know they think that way. But it's how do you get on that team? How do you be around those people? How do you make them make time for you? So
Well said. I have, there's this last prompt here, and I think it kind of relates to the last two. So we can just kind of touch on it quick. I know we're getting close to time here, but in what ways do you think that you're harder on yourself than anyone else is on you? I imagine that your answer to this question is going to be every way, but if we can try to like outline some specifics outside of just like I'm, I'm motivated at the gym, like I take notes a lot. Like, is there anything specific in your uh like career or creative endeavors specifically that might stand out or be a surprise to people?
yeah, I think for me, it's definitely communication. I would say like, I believe I'm a top tier communicator, but I'm so hard on myself of like leaving a bad impression, or like letting, if the conversation is like switched on to me, of like saying something that will like offend someone in some way. And I think a lot of that comes from being in rooms that, whether it was my confidence or something, or it was just like what I cared about, or how I like almost would try to hold people accountable, even though they weren't asking for it, how that offended people in ways. Or I think that like from when I was with skin tones, and like even growing up with my family, like that's something that everyone was like pretty hard on me about, was just like how I showed up. And so I think now that like was messing me up for a long time. And even when I got to Salesforce too, your team selling, like there's so many people that are talking to the same company, and like there's other deals going on. So like I would be getting messages like, why are you talking to this person? Blah, blah, blah. Like, and that affected me personally, because I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm doing something wrong based on how I'm communicating. But I think that's where I'm hardest on myself. And then Steph will tell you too that it's like all gas, no brakes. Like it's either I'm all the way in or I'm all the way out, and there's no in between. And if I'm not doing it all the way, then I'm like killing myself about it, because I'm not doing it to the 1000th degree that I believe it should be done. So, but how about you?
Yeah, I think I totally agree with what you're saying. I think the first thing that came to mind for me in being hard on myself, especially in ways that I don't need to be, is when it comes to creative direction. I think I work in a world that doesn't necessarily breed creatives, and I've kind of struggled to see myself as a creative as long as I've done the stuff that I do. But I've found that in pretty much every business that I've built or helped build,
Mhm.
The like design visual element of the business is what always feels so important to me, even when it like doesn't to the client or to anyone else. I've always worked in something that's so performance based that I'm just kind of checking the performance based boxes, or that's technically all I need to do. How things look and how things are perceived and how cool something is doesn't fall as high on the priority list. But whether it's like my website for Visible, I just worked on my brother's website. Like I always find myself spending far more time on the creative elements than I do on
Yeah.
and not, I shouldn't say what I should be, but like what I'm a professional at.
Yeah.
And there's always a separation again, like with the execution and like the ideas in my head.
Yeah.
I'll spend, I mean, the Visible branding is a prime example of this because, like, again, not a creative necessarily, not like a UX, UI, or logo or branding designer, but I had
Mhm.
visions in my head and I went through pretty good amount of money working with a few different designers to try to get that to a perfect place. To not really do anything necessarily for the business, like if working on an SEO studio, it doesn't need to be something that's
Yeah.
the sexiest thing out there, but even with this podcast, like I've made 1,000 different iterations to the profile photo and the banner, and just kind of trying to make sure things, whether it's for a YouTube channel or social media or website, are packaged properly.
But, that
Exactly.
makes sense though. Like, to me, that makes sense why you do that because I think you care so much about, like, who you are and especially what these things are represent you.
Yeah.
Like, I think one thing that I think for a long time, I was that way too. Like, that's all I would care about is that piece, but I noticed, like, I couldn't do the piece of, like I'd be so wrapped up in that piece that I wouldn't do the other pieces, so now I've tried to, like, let some of that go. That's why, like, with this stuff, I've just been like, I know y I trust you enough to know that your taste is gonna be immaculate, so I've kinda just, like, let you run with it in a lot of ways, but, like, because I know I can get so wrapped up in that, and then next thing you know, I miss out on the thing I'm supposed to be doing. But, like, I think it is so important, like, how you show up in the world in different ways is very much, like, important, though. I don't think a lot of people think about those things as much as they should, and especially if it's a business that has your name on it too, like, that is an extension of you first and foremost. And
Yeah.
I think that goes into even why, like, a lot of times, specifically with work, like, it's hard for someone to work for somebody else or, like, especially at least for me, why it's hard for me is, like, I don't think those things represent me as much as they should or what I would want to show the world or what I'd be proud to, like, show up in a room and fully be myself for.
Yeah. Never really thought about it that way. I also feel this is a good relationship with this podcast as well because we're kind of getting to switch roles a little bit. Like I'm so used to doing the opposite of the creative piece that it's kind of been a good outlet, and it is like obviously through my business stuff too. But yeah, I don't know. We've all almost got to switch places a little bit in what you're maybe used to doing versus what I'm used to doing, and now getting reps
Yeah.
in on the other side.
Yeah.
But
But yeah, damn, this was a full therapy session this time.
I know. Well, like I said, I don't always have the best answers to some of these questions, but you're hitting the nail on the head. So I appreciate you carrying us through this one.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, it's just like all this stuff has been on my mind so much lately. And I think it's hard to speak about these things at time. Like even in my relationship, like Steph and I have these conversations at time, but also like you don't want to seem vulnerable to some people in ways. Even though this is like going out to the world and like it is being very vulnerable.
Yeah.
But like I think that there's a difference to like know when the time and the place is to do it. And that even goes into what we were talking about earlier of like getting in the flow state to be able to work on things is like, I know that if I show up at this time, like I'm going to be able to speak freely and really probably get the things off my chest that I probably should be getting off in my journal too, like, but it's hard to get there. So
And that's why we started this in the first place, right? Like, I don't think either of us are in it to become some big podcasters or to have this thing go crazy. It's just like, let's hit record. Let's talk
Mhm.
about the stuff that's on our brains. You talked about having other people in your life that are potentially scared to talk about some of this stuff. If we're
Yeah.
able to get vulnerable enough to talk about the shit that we're going through, someone else is probably going to have a similar experience in their life and take something from it. If
Yeah.
I'm the one that has to take, the bullet for someone else to like process and get some of the responses that you're getting from my questions and vice versa, then I'm
Yeah.
happy to be that guy.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
All right.
Well, good work.
Episode 10,
So 10,
2 weeks in a row.
2 weeks in a row.
All right, bro. I'll see you next week.
Yes.